Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of She Talks Business. And we have an old but favorite guest back with us today, Stephanie Rainey. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be back. It's so good to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back as a guest. And thank you for participating in this season, which is all about, Coach's Corner. And, it's funny, before the show, Stephanie was asking me questions about, what is the purpose of this season? And I was sharing with her, the purpose of this season is to help people to decide wherever they're at in their business, when the right time is to invest in help. The purpose is not to convince y'all that you should work with me. The purpose is to help you to borrow some courage from the experiences that other people have had. And so before we get into that, I want to do a proper introduction for Stephanie, because just because she's been on the show a bunch of times before in different capacities, doesn't mean that you know who she is. So Stephanie Rainey is one of my favorite people. She is a seasoned business owner who built and sold her private swim school, the Aqualife Swim Academy, the first of its kind in Ottawa, Canada. And she knew when she started that business, she was building it to sell. In the early days of growing her swim school, Stephanie lost two fantastic candidates that her operations manager to the city pool in a single day. Can you imagine losing like those people all in one day? How awful that is for a small business owner. She vowed that she would never let that happen again and went all in on learning everything she could about hiring, training, and retaining the right people. She read books, she took courses, she invested in advisors, and eventually she took everything that she learned and she formulated her own methodology, the Hire Right method, which she used to grow her swim school to 6 locations with a team of 4 full-time staff and over 28 swim instructors. Since selling the Aqualife in 2018, Stephanie has been using her BED master. I don't even know if that's the right way to say it. Like, it's your bachelor's in education, your BED. Yeah. Your BED says the high school dropout, your bachelor's in education, your master's in writing, and over 30 years of teaching experience to help business owners implement the Hire Right method into their business so they can build their dream team and stop wasting time and money. So Stephanie's new business is Hiring Like a Pro. And I am excited about this conversation because we get to talk about 2 businesses that you have, which is cool. So let's just start with a little bit of background information. Why don't you tell everybody about the Aqualife, why you started it, when you started it, what your vision was, and then let's talk about how that parlayed you into your new business, Hiring Like a Pro.
Okay, wow. The Aqualife Swim Academy came out of a move to Ottawa. And I mean, I was a high school teacher for 12 years, but I knew I didn't want to go back to the classroom. And I had made a promise to my husband, wise or unwise, that I would pay off our mortgage if we moved to Ottawa, because I really wanted my kids to pursue their dreams of going to art high school. I had never had the opportunity to do so. And my daughter showed such great enjoyment of theater arts that I really wanted her to have a chance to go to Canterbury High School here in Ottawa. So when we did that and I made that promise, I realized that I really had to make whatever I wanted to do happen. And I was absolutely dedicated to doing something that I would love. And when I looked around, I realized you could build a swim school. I talked to somebody in the States who had done it. And I thought, wow, this is perfect. It melds my teaching with my love of swimming. And I get to build my own school the way I want it and the way I think education should be done.
Wow. So I find that fascinating. I didn't know that you made that bold promise to your husband then. So I knew you had made that promise and that was part of why you wanted to build and sell your business, but I didn't know that you made it then. So talk to me a little bit about how that business started and what were some of the struggles that you had in the early days?
Right. So I really didn't know much. I knew nothing about starting a business. I'd never even taken a business course in high school. So I avoided business under all circumstances. Although I tend to have a real entrepreneurial streak, it was something that hadn't gone well in my family. I had a history. My parents owned a cafe on the main street. It never made any money. My sister started her own business with her husband. They created an incredible product that was way before its time, and they went into big debt to be able to finance that company. And I was really quite scared of what it meant to own a business. And so I thought, I know that I don't know much. I know how to teach, and I know how to create a school, and I know how to get children to swim. But I really don't know much about running a business. And so I started off and I won a grant from the government to start my business. And so it actually didn't cost me a penny to start my business, which is so rare in this day and age. And I became apparent within the first year that I didn't know about the money side of things. I was going a lot by gut feel. I just felt like we're not making enough money. And, how do I fix these problems? And while I had, I have really good common sense, I just didn't know enough about business.
Mm-hmm.
And so early, I invested in a coach, but it wasn't the right coach for me. This person didn't know a lot about how to bring up the revenue. And because I had made such a bold promise to my husband, I wasn't ready to let myself fail or to wait 5 years to start making money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I vaguely remember that. Didn't that person tell you it would take you 5 years to make money?
Yeah, they said it's normal between 3 and 5 years not to make a penny. And I thought, that's not acceptable. I can't wait that long.
That's not acceptable. I agree. That is 100% not acceptable at all. One of the things that I think is really powerful, though, you have the capacity to learn, and you have a strong drive. Like, you're very curious about learning things, and you will turn over every stone you can to learn what you need to be successful. I think it's really interesting that your family had some challenges with business, and you have built a successful business, sold that business, fulfilled your promise, and then started again. So clearly, your intuition around getting help with what you didn't know was the right thing to do. Talk to me a little bit about, how did you realize that the first coach that you hired wasn't the right coach for you?
Right. So what I realized early on is when I would talk about how to bring up revenue, he didn't have a lot of suggestions around that. He sent me to an accountant who he thought could help me figure out, what were other businesses in my industry making a year? How would I increase my revenue? What could I do to do that? And the fact that he handed me off in such an important aspect, I thought that was a red flag for me. I was like, okay, yeah, I need systems and processes, and I need to be organized, and I need to have, lead well, and those sort of things that it takes in a business. But I seriously need to increase my bottom line. And he just didn't seem to have what it took to do that. Mm-hmm. And so I started looking elsewhere.
So talk to me a little bit about what it was like to build a company and sell it. Because a lot of people never get to do that, because a lot of people buy into the myth that it's going to take 3 to 5 years to make money. And a lot of people are not willing to get intimate with their numbers, to really understand what their margins are all about, to understand the valuation of their business so they have something that's sellable. So can you talk to us a little bit about the approach that you took to building something you could sell?
Right. So the very first thing is I built my business, and I started my business with the end in mind. Now, that may not be the case for other people who are listening. They may have started something and they don't know where it's going to end. But for my mind, I need a trajectory for any project that I start. I need to know that it starts somewhere and that it's going to end somewhere. And I can tell you, in the middle of 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I thought, oh my gosh, is this ever going, and how am I going to wrap this thing up? It's so huge. I often called it, the steed, the horse that I was riding. And it just seemed like the horse got bigger and stronger and faster. And I wasn't sure always how to stay on. And that's where you definitely came in. But building it, Yeah, it took a lot of focus. It took a lot of like a plan and a strategy. And that was something that I didn't have firmly in place until you came on, until, we brought you on board as coach. And then that really took shape. And once I had the idea of what the trajectory was, like how long should it take? How much should we grow the revenue to? And then I had an evaluation, year 6, or yes, year 6, and sold year 7. And year 6, I went to a broker and I said, hey, I want to sell my business. He said, ooh, it's very cool. He's like, you don't own a location and you have all these clients and this is a great revenue and you've doubled your revenue, every year since you started. And so he was very interested in my business. We created a package which goes out kind of as an anonymous business, meaning you don't know what the name of the business is, so that people don't realize that you're selling in your own community. You have the freedom to, entertain offers before everyone knows that you're selling your business. And so they create this package, and it's really based on how quickly have you grown? What's the potential for growth? Who would be interested in this? What processes do you have in place, systems, etc., so that it could be a turnkey business for someone else. And I was amazed by that process because he came back with a number that was exactly the number I was looking to have as a final sale number, simply to fulfill on the promise that I had made to my family. And then it was a process of putting it on the market, and we did that, and it was sold within a year.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to me that I knew that he was going to come back with that number because I knew your numbers.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to me. To me, that was, if I look at your business, I feel like you went through phases of getting operationally sound, getting really understanding what drives revenue, getting your marketing aligned to continue to drive revenue. And then you went and you took a really deep dive into understanding your numbers. I remember the year you said to me, you actually told me it was the last year you were going to work with me, which wasn't true, but you said, I want to learn how to understand my P&L, my balance sheet. Like, I want to know what these numbers mean. And we spent a year every single month going through those numbers until you had such a great command of the financial side of your business. And so I bring that up because if you are listening to this show, Stephanie didn't know that part of the business. It was not, she was a fish out of water when it came to that. And she committed to a year of learning. She committed to double clicking on what some of the numbers meant. She committed to hard conversations with some of her suppliers in order to turn numbers around. Like, she got right in there, got her hands dirty, and learned everything that she needed to learn about the financial aspect of running a business. And if you're listening and you think, gee, I'd like to build a business that I could sell to pay off my house in a 7-year period. You can't do that if you don't understand the numbers in your business, if you don't understand where valuations come from and how important the numbers are. And not only just the numbers being important, but the numbers being clean. Because when you work with a broker who's going to help you sell your business, a buyer wants to know that those numbers are actually the truth. And you need to make it easy for them to see the financial makeup of the business. So, Stephanie.
And its potential.
Yes, absolutely. So you exited your business and you kind of toyed with a couple of other ideas that didn't really go that far. And I mean, one of them was the swimologist, which I know you still do some with, but COVID kind of hit and it took away your in-person ability to launch that business. And so then you started working on Hire Like a Pro. So talk to us about why, with all the experience you have, you chose to take this one little slice of your business and focus there.
Right. So what I did is, I guess I experimented for a while after I sold my business. I was really curious as to what aspect of other businesses or what other work I might enjoy. I even went back to the classroom for a day or two in kindergarten doing supply work, which ended very quickly. I realized that the classroom was definitely not the place for me. And in doing so, it really helped me realize that the key to what I am passionate about and what I love is teaching. And as long as it has an impact and it can really help someone else and make a difference in their life, that's what I'm up to. So whether it's in the pool with an adult who's petrified of water and wants to learn how to swim, and or whether it's a business owner who's like, oh, I don't want to grow. I'm so scared because every time I hire someone, it doesn't work out and it ends up being a nightmare for me. Or even businesses that hire and feel like they don't get the work that they want out of for the people that are on their teams.
Mm-hmm.
I know how huge that can impact your bottom line and even like your whole health and what you feel about yourself, your confidence, your ability to make a living and to help your own family. And so if I could show a business, what I learned in creating a team and how to do that, then, I'm totally up for that. And that's what I'm taking on and hiring like a pro.
Yeah, I love that. I think that hiring the right people, retaining the right people is such an important part of building a business. And a lot of business owners, when they start, they don't know that side of the business, just like you didn't know it at the very beginning. And if you don't ever invest in learning, it's going to be hard for you to scale because you can't really scale as a one-man show. You need a team, you need support. So I think it's a really important thing that you're doing. And I think that you have really unique experience because 28 instructors, most of those instructors were students.
Yes.
And they had to travel to all these different pools across the city, most of them taking public transportation. And you had to teach those students how to be responsible adults, not only in terms of how they managed work by arriving on time, but how they managed relationships with parents, how they applied training in the pool. So, it was a pretty complex situation that you were able to navigate and build on.
Yes, it was very complex. And the thing is that because I knew the end goal for the business, because we had strategized that, I knew what size I needed to grow to. So I knew that I needed 6 locations in order to bring in the revenue that would get me the sale in the end. And the funny thing is that building a team became kind of like the bonus joy of building the swim school. I had no idea that leadership was going to like bring me the most make me feel the best out of everything that I did out of creating the Aqua Life. I really thought that it was going to be like, the albatross, the thing that really weighed me down. And in the end,
some days it was.
Yeah, it was. But, sometimes when you're uncomfortable, that growth that happens out of that space is really what is most meaningful to you. And that's definitely the case with leadership and leading a team and building a team. So you're right. Like students are not the kind of employees that you think, ooh, I think I'm going to go out and get a bunch of students, especially students that are in charge of the lives of small children.
Yes.
And in the pool, it's life or death. It's really, it's not uncommon. I had at one point, sadly to say, had to jump in one time in a lesson to pick up a small child that had wandered off the side of the steps. It's my employees had the lives of these small children in their hands, and so I couldn't make hiring mistakes. It was not an option. And so that made me really refine and perfect my the whole machinery and how I evaluated and how I also developed all of my staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And those are skills that are vital in the work that you do today. So let's talk a little bit about your willingness to hire help, because I think there's a few things that are interesting for me. So one, you had a business coach before you worked with me. Mm-hmm. And you recognized that coach wasn't skilled in the areas that you needed help with. A lot of people would have taken that and said, business coaching isn't for me, it doesn't work. But you didn't do that. And your business wasn't that big when you reached out to me. And working with me was not an insignificant investment for you to make at that time. So can you talk a little bit about your decision to invest to get to where you were going versus waiting to get to where you were going before you invest? Because I hear a lot of people say, and if you're listening, if you do this, you want to listen to this lady's answer, because she's done some pretty awesome stuff. Once I make enough money, I'm going to invest in your coaching. They don't recognize that the investment is what's going to help them make the money. So how did you, get over I hired the wrong coach, or I've outgrown my coach, I need to find someone else, and then find the courage to invest significantly more in the next coach?
Right. So it wasn't a fast process of letting go of my first coach. I really wanted to give this person the benefit of the doubt and have some tough conversations with him. And I did. And I could see that he wasn't the right fit. So I took, I wish I had done it quicker. But it took me about a month or a month and a half to gradually get to the point where I was ready to let go of his help and his support, and and let him know in a very honest conversation that I wouldn't be working with him anymore. And I have to say, because just to go back, like, it seems to me like a no-brainer to hire a coach now, but at the time I had a lot of guilt around it. I felt really bad, and I'll tell you why. The underlying thing that I was telling myself is, you should be able to do this by yourself. I don't know how many times I, went to bed at night after talking to my husband, and he's like, well, you know what to do. And I was like, I feel like I know what to do, but I don't know what to do sometimes. And I also feel like I just need someone else in my corner. Like, no one wants to hear me talk about my business. No one wants to hear all the things that I'm dealing with. If I have problems with, emotions or my day-to-day life, I go to a therapist. And yet here I am, like, racked with guilt about bringing on someone into my business that I'm going to pay to help me do this. And so it took a lot to get past that. But I can tell you what happened was that the discomfort of not meeting my promise got more uncomfortable than the discomfort of saying I needed help and putting money where my mouth was. And so because I was so uncomfortable not holding to my promise, I knew that, and when we spoke, and it was going to be a significant investment, that I was going to do everything I had to, not only to make up the money to pay for my coaching, but to go way beyond that and to show that, I could grow this business.
Mm-hmm. So you have a habit of telling people, just do what Lisa says. And so can we just talk about that? And not from, again, this isn't about me. This is about, how do you get the best results from working with a coach? So, did you ever do things that I told you to do that felt really uncomfortable, that you weren't sure were the right things to do?
Yes, is the short answer to that.
So why do you think it's important for people to have a certain level of trust in their coaches? And, I'm going to ask you kind of the opposite question is, how do you know when you can trust your coach? Because if you had listened to your first coach, it would have taken you 3 to 5 years to make money. So where's that balance for people in terms of listening and doing with the coach? How do you discern if the discomfort is a growth opportunity, or if the discomfort is because you're getting bad advice?
Yes. So I think the answer for me comes down to data. So as soon as I have the data, I will take a chance. But as soon as I have some data, then I will make a more permanent decision. So for example, I'm willing to suspend my, distrust or whatever that is. Yeah, my skepticism of working with a coach if I can see that there's going to be results. And in a short period of time of working with you, I could see already that there were results. I could see, even if it wasn't showing up in the dollars and cents, I could see that it was going to lead to that. And that we were really, truly solving problems that I had in my business. And that's why I love one-on-one coaching, because we're dealing with my particular problem and we're putting both our heads together. And then I guess the whole reason it switched to just do what Lisa says is because it was never comfortable. Usually the things that I needed to do have the most growth were the most uncomfortable. They were the things I literally didn't want to do.
I remember the day I told you had to pick up the phone and call all these people, and you were like,
yeah. Exactly. And so I don't let the message and the alert to my brain when I'm uncomfortable be true. Like, I don't let it be the reason I stop doing what it is. Just because it's uncomfortable, I learn to keep moving even through the discomfort and not let that make the decision for me, but instead wait to see what it looks like on the other side, look at the data, and then decide if it was a good decision. It's like when I go to swim in the morning, like I wake up at 6 a.m., sometimes I get in my frozen car. And if I made the decision to go swimming based on, the weather, or, if I felt like getting out of bed at 6 a.m., I mean, of course, the obvious answer is no. It's super uncomfortable. Why would I do that? And I don't do it when I'm putting on my bathing suit, and I don't do it when I first jump in the water and it's freezing cold. What I do is I wait an hour after swimming and I go, how do I feel? And I go, oh, I feel amazing. I'm so glad I did that. It's the same with coaching.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I didn't get out of bed this morning because I didn't sleep all last night, and I didn't go for my walk this morning. So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
When you have the mental discipline to make those decisions, you can make things right.
It's to defer your judgment because it's really uncomfortable to do what needs to get done. I mean, there's no way around it in business or life. Sometimes it's super uncomfortable, and you can't let that be the decision maker. If you're really, really dedicated to your results, the results you want to see.
So in your new business, you are, pretty much in startup mode, still, the first year of kind of being in this business, and you and I have started to work together again.
Yeah.
So can you talk to me a little bit? And you also just went through this program for your business that was not an insignificant investment. And I want you to share with our listeners why you courageously invest in you and how you find the courage to do that.
See, the funny thing is, that's so funny that you frame the question that way, because I think of it as an investment in my family. I know that sounds kind of backwards, but I know, like, I'm spending the money, but I'm spending it with the responsibility of a promise I've made to my family. Now I've made a new promise to my family, and that is my husband is retiring, like literally in a couple of weeks. And I've made a promise that I'm going to make up the difference to pay off what we now have as a new mortgage on our property, because we invested in a cottage and we bought a travel van and some really cool stuff for retirement. And we're not going to sell our main property until my daughter is done school here. So I want it so that when we sell the property that is here, that it's completely debt free, so that we can go and put that into building a new cottage for our retirement. So with that sort of dream in mind, I've made the promise that I'm going to pay that difference. I'm going to pay that so that and I have 5 years, 5 years to do it. So with that new promise in mind, I know that if I build it myself, it's going to be real slow, because I've been working on it the last 2 years. But if I get you on board and we get our heads together around this, I know that both of our instincts together and, my kind of ability to execute is really going to make that dream come true. If anyone can do it, I know that me, with the help of you, can get that done.
Well, I appreciate the confidence that you have in our relationship. And I also really value how you take action, in between calls. I think that one of the biggest reasons that coaching is ineffective for business owners is business owners don't actually do the work. And when they don't do the work, you actually impede your coach's ability to help you. And so I think that if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, hey, maybe I need a coach next year, one of the things that I would say to you is do a good job in terms of picking the right coach that is the right fit for you. And secondly, once you've made that decision, make a big, bold promise to yourself that you will get uncomfortable and you will do the things that need to be done so that you can collect your own data on whether the coaching relationship is effective for you or not. I have another client that I work with, and it actually made me a little uncomfortable at first, but she's got like a scorecard. And every
Mm.
single time I tell her to do something and she gets new business because of it, she adds it to the score. Like she tallies the amount of revenue that she generates based on the advisement that she gets from me so that she can actually see if it was a good ROI. And she's just renewed. So the
Mm.
ROI was good, but it made me a little, I like, at first I was like, oh, I don't know that anybody's ever done that before. But like you said, you doubled your business pretty much every year that we worked together. So that number in itself is, indicative of the results that we got together.
I love it. It's based on data, right?
Mhm.
Instead of gut. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's time to stop moving out of like running things on your gut and go with, what you actually see as data. The
Mhm.
other big thing that I did, like you're talking about like being in action, being executing and in performance. And I took a course and it recently distinguished like the difference between like being in your feelings and being in performance. And I used to spend a lot of time in my feelings, and it's not like I feel any less now, but what I do is I try to take action anyways. It's like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work, or I have whatever feelings about it, or things are going on in my daily life. And I execute anyways, no matter how I feel.
Mhm. You are a continuous learner. And I
Yeah.
think that that is one of the things that has helped you to be successful in your business. You are not afraid to admit what you don't know, and you're not afraid to go learn what you don't know. And there's a lot of things that we need to learn about being in business. I've been in business, running my own business since 2006, and there's still things that I don't know that I have to go learn. And so if you think that when you open up a business that you are going to know everything you need to know, you're not. You're going to have to constantly be learning in order to stay competitive and in the game.
I agree.
All
Things
right.
are
And
always changing.
any final insights, wisdom that you would like to share with people who are listening, who are thinking about, you know, maybe how to create that big, bold promise, or what they should do if they want 2023 to be a really great year? What advice would you give them?
Okay, I think I have two things. One is invest in a coach if you know you really want to jump up a step. If you're happy with the growth and the trajectory you're on, I mean, all the power to you. Good job. Keep going. If you know you want to take a big step up, let someone help you do that, and then find the right person based on the data that you get after you take one little step with them. And then you can decide, yes, you can change your mind at any point. You can find a new coach at any point. So, but at least take that leap and then check out the data. The second thing, which makes a huge difference to me, and we didn't really talk about it, but I have a group, an accountability group that I work with. And every Monday, we pick our top 3 things to execute. And they have to be in line with the big goals we have in our life. So if they're like kind of like, I got to go shopping, or I got to this or that, or it seems like things that are not in line with where you're headed, and they're not bold and they're not really going to move the needle, then we discount them for each other. We say, pick another one. So every Monday we pick our 3 goals, and then we are accountable the next Monday to say if we did them or not. And we're not allowed to say anything like, because I was busy, or because this, or because of that. We can only say if we did it or we didn't do it. And then we report our source of effectiveness or our source of ineffectiveness so that we can learn as we go.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I'd find 2 other business owners up to big things and hold each other accountable.
Yeah, or a mastermind group or something where you can do that for sure. I want to just kind of double click on one thing you said, because before you and I started working together privately, you came to a day of masterminding with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a really important nugget. If you are looking for a business coach, before you go all in and make a significant investment, find a place to dip your toe in the pond. So, go to maybe look at, like, I have the strategy lab, for example, and the strategy lab is, I think right now it's a $3,000 investment for a year, which is a great place to dip your toe if you're not sure, but you're curious about working with me. And my promise in the strategy lab is if you do what I say, you can add $100,000 to your business. But regardless of whether it's me or it's someone else, find a first step that you can take. I had another woman who coached with me for a few years, and she said, I wanted to find out if you were really legit. So I signed up for some of your free stuff. Then I went to one of your live events. Then I sent you an email, and everything was, what's the word? Coherent. Like everything, every experience I had with you demonstrated that you really were who I thought you were. So do a little bit of due diligence, stick your toe in the pond and see if it feels right to you. If you can get a positive, like if you can get a positive outcome from where you start, then chances are you can get a greater outcome if you continue.
I would add to that, see this person in action. So you are like fun to behold in action because you're so awesome when you like coach people on the spot. So that mastermind that you're talking about, I was like, whoa, this woman is on fire. Like her advice is spot on. And so I got to see that in action.
Yeah. You know, I'm actually thinking about bringing those back in 2023. I haven't done days of masterminds in a while. And so if you're listening to this and you think you'd like to attend one, feel free to send me a message. I'm thinking about hosting one in February in Florida. So if you are in the northern part of Canada where it's cold, or the United States where it's cold, and you want a little bit of a warm break, let me know. All right, Stephanie Rainey, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing everything that you have. Congratulations on being a founder who successfully exited her business and made a big, bold promise come true. And I can't wait to see you do the same thing with your second business.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for having me, Lisa. It's always a joy.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for listening to She Talks Business. And if you haven't already left us a review on your favorite podcast platform, I would love it if you would do that. And yeah, that's all she wrote. Have a great day, everyone. Bye for now.